Hello, and welcome back to Zenin Fanfics. Today we're starting an exciting new series. What if Deku had nature plant quirk? If you enjoy this video, please like and subscribe for more content. The story we're featuring is written by MyMindsRealm on Wattpad. You can find all the relevant links in the description, so be sure to check out the author's profile and say hello. Now let's dive into the story. Aizawa wasn't having the best day. He woke up with a hangover. Hizashi had screamed a stray insect. A villain managed to stuff his nose somehow, and he didn't have that much work to do, which landed him to where he is now, sitting on a park bench, looking homeless and pathetic. He chugged his coffee and sighed out heavily. This day is too long. He pinched the bridge of his nose in an effort to try and clear it out. It surprised him that such a tiny difference bothered him so much. Calm down. There's plenty for everyone. He opened his eyes. Who was up this late at night? He turned his head to try and spot the speaker. Shush, shush, you already had some. Internally groaning, Aizawa pulled himself up and off of the bench slowly. A loud rustle escaped the bushes next to him. Where are you going? A cat pushed its head against Aizawa's leg. Aizawa reached down to pick it up and smiled slightly at the familiar smiley face on the cat's head. A boy with light green hair stumbled out of the bushes. There you are, Emote. Aizawa quirked an eyebrow. You named Smiley Emote. The kid was unfazed. You named Emote Smiley. Aizawa was slightly impressed. Were you the one talking? The kid nodded his head and stepped back a bit to sit in the bushes. Yeah, it's quiet at night. Emote usually follows me around to make sure I'm not alone. Together we like to take care of some of the damaged plants. You sounded like you were talking to multiple beings. You aren't hiding any cats from me, are you? The kid let out a soft laugh. It fit his voice, gentle. No, sometimes squirrels or badgers or just passing animals will join us for a short while. He brought out a bag of food from his hoodie pocket. It became a habit to bring snacks along. It would be unfair if I didn't let them have any. Aizawa didn't realize he was smiling until he sat down. He felt cleansed. What's your name, kid? The boy held out his hand. I'm Midoriya Izuku, a junior high student. What's your name? Aizawa. He reached out to shake his hand. It felt cold, but in a good way. Well, Aizawa, it's nice to meet you. Same to you. The two sat and talked while Emote sprawled out in between them. A few other animals would pop out of the bushes and lumber over to Midoriya for scratches or simply sat beside him. I'm sorry, but is your hair moving? Midoriya let out a small gasp and went to pat his hair back down. I'm sorry, my hair acts like leaves do. They startle at the slightest breath of wind. It's okay, my hair moves too. Aizawa activated his quirk and let his hair float through the air. He sensed a quirk gene in the child but couldn't get to it. What's your quirk, Midoriya? Midoriya seemed to glow, just a bit, and happily explained his quirk. I call it Flora, as in flora and fauna. It allows me to have characteristics similar to plants. To use a trait, I have to know the scientific and common name for the plant, as well as its regional areas. I think the animals are a side effect. I feel like nature to them. Nature is safe. He held out an arm, and Aizawa watched as small slivers grew out of his skin. Opuntia, commonly known as the prickly pear cactus. I use this for defense, but people mostly leave me alone. The prickles retreated back into his arm. I can photosynthesize as well. It saves my mother money and is much more fulfilling than actual food. He let out a sigh. The drawback of that I can't hold my breath. I can't get scared near people due to the prickles. I can't seem dangerous to animals unless I activate a poisonous plant. And I have a suspicion that using too many plant transformations in a day would take a toll on my body. Suspicion. Aizawa had been listening intently to Midoriya as he spoke. His use of the word suspicion threw him into a loop. Midoriya shrugged his shoulders. I haven't really found a limit yet. Sometimes at night, I wake up unusually exhausted and find flowers everywhere, but that could just be a side effect from using my quirk unconsciously. Besides that, what's your quirk, Aizawa? Aizawa let out a huff. My quirk lets me freeze other quirks as long as I have them in my sight. When I blink, the effects vanish. It causes a strain on my eyes, and my hair lifts when I use it. Have you tried using your second eyelid? Aizawa gave him a look. My what? Oh, do you not have one? The boy looked thoughtful for a moment before opening his eyes widely and showing Aizawa the transparent cover. he had over his eyes. I suppose it's another effect from my quirk. Some plants have protective coverings. He blinked. I don't think I would have found that out without your help. Thank you. You're welcome. The two sat in silence, and Aizawa wondered why he exposed his quirk. The kid is so open, he acts like he doesn't have anything to hide. It makes me feel like I don't have anything to hide. Night. Aizawa shook his head. What was that? I asked why you were out so late at night. It's not exactly healthy to be wandering around. Hypocrite. The kid lightly shook his head. No, I live right over there. He pointed to the apartment complex across the street. Aizawa was perplexed. Who just gave away where they lived to a stranger? How do you know I'm not a murderer? I could be a villain for all you know. I do know. Midoriya lightly pet Emote's back. Emote wouldn't spend time with you if you had ill intentions. I secretly believe he has a quirk, but he can tell whether somebody will do wrong. So I know you aren't out this late at night, because you carry bad will. All right, you caught me. I work for the legal system and just finished a late-night shift. Midoriya gave him a smile that screamed, I knew it. Oddly enough, Aizawa wasn't insulted. It was more of a gentle reminder that Aizawa was okay. Midoriya lifted himself up and offered a hand to Aizawa to help him up. I hope tomorrow's shift will be easier for you. I hope to see you again. It's almost awakening time for everyone. The badgers have all gone back into their holes, and the tree leaves are starting to bend towards the east. Good day to you, Aizawa. Midoriya walked across the street and into the building. Aizawa walked back toward his house and only realized once he was on the couch that his nose had cleared. Aizawa didn't expect to meet up with Midoriya the following day. Well, he did, just not the way it happened. As you can guess, it was All Might's fault. When will that man learn the loud and immediate approach is not the only one? Aizawa sighed as he sat and filled out the paperwork. Midoriya was sitting next to him, at the police station, waiting for his mother. The event that occurred. The sludge villain incident. According to Midoriya's story, he was walking home from school when the sludge villain attacked him. For some reason, his quirk calmed the villain down before any harm was done. Then All Might loudly burst through a drain pipe and scarred the villain beyond rationality. The villain attacked Izuku and was punched by All Might. He stopped writing. This part was something Midoriya had made him and Tsukauchi promised a secrecy about. Midoriya had latched onto All Might while he was unconscious with his vines and woke up 30 meters in the air. All Might landed on a rooftop to drop Midoriya off. That's when Midoriya, on a spur of random self-doubt, asked All Might if somebody with a plant-based quirk could be a hero. Aizawa almost broke his pen as he recalled what Midoriya said next. He said no, a person with a plant quirk can't be a hero. Plants are too weak to do anything on the field. He said I could be a gardener or something like that. Soothing his hand, Aizawa resumed writing. Midoriya left the area, but encountered the sludge villain again during the plaza scene. Knowing that All Might wasn't anywhere near and that the heroes standing by wouldn't interfere, Midoriya walked onto the scene and successfully calmed the villain down. The villain broke down into tears and cried about how his boss had found out what his quirk was and was so disgusted that she fired him and that now he couldn't get a new job because she had spread word about his tainted quirk and that he now had no way to pay for his mother's house. Midoriya started a GoFundMe for the villain to help him until he was back on his feet again. It was taken down shortly after it was created due to the police station hiring the sludge to help take in rather mobile lawbreakers. The victim claimed to know Midoriya and scolded him for using his weak but quirk, and about how he could have died if he hadn't gotten lucky. Aizawa set the pen down and thought about the second part of Midoriya's hidden tale. Midoriya had later run into All Might again when walking home. All Might said that Midoriya had a true hero spirit and offered his quirk to him. Midoriya denied it. Aizawa was thankful for that. When asked why by both All Might and Tsukauchi, Midoriya said the same thing. Why should I, who he had said didn't have the potential to be a hero, accept a power that isn't my own after needing to prove myself to him? What difference is there between the me who he talked to on the rooftop and the me who walked in to help both villain and citizen? There isn't one. The only factor that changed was All Might seeing what I could do versus All Might trusting what I could do. Aizawa had to admit that Midoriya had a point, a very good one at that. His worry was if All Might could admit Midoriya was correct, or if the hero would continue to pester him. A green-haired woman walked through the office doors. She didn't rush, she didn't hobble, she didn't seem to be in a hurry. "Izuku, dearest, what happened?" "I helped a citizen, mother, and I got taken away for it." The woman turned to Aizawa, and for a split-second death was written all over her face. "Who is he, my love?" "He, mother, is a kind man who helped prove my innocence." The woman smiled and stuck out her hand. "I am Mrs. Midoriya. It's so nice to meet you. Thank you for helping my son. Good day." She turned to leave, and Izuku followed. Aizawa awkwardly walked behind them. He was only there to watch Midoriya and was to go watch the blonde one afterward. "Izuku, darling, is Katsuki here too?" "Yes, mother." Mitsuki would be upset if she had to leave work to collect her son, and poor Masaru can't handle Katsuki. "Come then, let's get him." "This way, mother." Izuku's face paled to a light shade of yellow, and his body switched directions. He saw Aizawa's questioning gaze. Helianthus, commonly known as the sunflower. It twists its body towards the direction of the sun, but since there is no sun in this building, it would naturally follow the greatest heat source. Bakugo Katsuki has an explosive quirk that requires him to sweat nitroglycerin and have an abnormal body temperature. He spoke in a tone similar to a kind, sympathetic teacher. Aizawa found himself nodding along with Midoriya's words. They entered the room Bakugo was in, and the angry blonde calmed down at the sight of Mrs. Midoriya. The three left the building, and Aizawa finished the paperwork. That night, Aizawa found himself collapsed on the park bench again. Emote, he preferred Smiley, but the cat never responded to that. On his chest, and Midoriya sitting on the ground playing with an opossum. The same thing happened the next night, and the next, and the next. Aizawa found himself thinking about the unstressful hours he would spend with Midoriya whenever he got a headache or was too overwhelmed. It was sad that he thought about them near constantly. He would soon be teaching at you. Midoriya learned this and asked for help with some assignments that gave him trouble. When Aizawa learned it would be the hero course, he personally asked Midoriya if he would like help in combat training. It had to take place during the day at times, so Midoriya could refill his stomach and energy levels. When it took place at night, Midoriya would literally glow to light up the area. They held mutual respect for each other and talked often. Aizawa learned that, while Midoriya might not have thought so, the boy was surrounded by idiots. Midoriya learned that Aizawa was being overworked. Aizawa disagreed, but when he listened to Midoriya's reasonings, he understood where the boy was coming from. One day, after a particularly bad afternoon, Aizawa asked a question that stumped Midoriya momentarily. "Will you be my personal student?" Mrs. Midoriya was hesitant. She knew her son had been spending time with a law worker, but for that worker to be a hero, that was new to her, yet here he was, on his knees, asking for her permission to train her son. What was she supposed to say? It had been clear to her that Izuku had grown fond of his late-night walks. He even went out to buy a second watering can. Her son had never really spent time with the other kids. He wasn't bullied. No, it wasn't that. He just didn't talk that much to them. He didn't get loud. He didn't get angry. He didn't flaunt his power. He was weird in their eyes. He was the quiet kid who took pleasure from sitting in a quiet circle of blossoming flowers and liked to read. When she first heard about Aizawa, she was worried at first. Would he treat her son like the others did? She was elated to hear that Aizawa simply accepted that Izuku was quiet and that Aizawa liked to sit in silence as well. Maybe Aizawa wasn't a bad influence. But he was a hero. Heroes cause trouble. Heroes got their loved ones hurt. She didn't want her son to be hurt. She often thought of his quirk as a heavenly blessing, heaven's official blessing, to her and her son. With his quirk, he would never be hurt. He would never get hungry. He would never run out of air. If he went in a hero work, who knows what would happen? He could run into a villain who had bug-related quirk or a light-gathering quirk. Then again, if he did become Aizawa's apprentice, he could protect himself. He could learn proper things, and that would increase his chances of survival. It had always, whether Izuku admitted it or not, had hoped to be a hero. With Aizawa's help, his chances might grow. "All right, you could take on my son as your personal student," she said. She stood up and leaned over Aizawa, giving him her glare that promised pain. But if anything happens to my son that can't be explained, I will have your hide. This is my son, my only remaining family. This is the boy I watched grow up. He is my everything, the only thing that keeps me going, and I'm entrusting him into your care. I hope you know just how much trust I'm giving you. She watched Aizawa flinch. He got the message. He knew the risks. He touched his head to the floor. Thank you, ma'am. I will protect your son as if he were my own. Good. She signaled for Izuku to come into the room. I assume you know what this means, Izuku, my love. Izuku nodded his head, and the next thing Inko felt was his arms wrapping her in a hug. They felt soft. Filigree hosta, commonly known as Dash the White Hosta. Izuku, you know it's my favorite. It was the first flower Izuku had given her when Hisashi went missing to make her feel better. It was the flower that started their new life. Inko glanced down at Aizawa, who was still sitting. Stand up and have a cup of tea. Raise her head. Tell me more about your plan. I know Hey, exam is going to be next year. Aizawa stood up and sat on the love seat. He thanks Izuku when he handed him a cup of tea. A hero does need physical training. That is a must if they wish to stay alive, but they also need academical and mental training. Over the course of 9 months, once school lets out, I'll train him for 3 months on each subject. 1 every month. Unacceptable. Aizawa, startled. Inko set one leg on top of the other. Do you truly expect a child to be able to recall a subject after only a month? And then spend 2 months without reviewing? You'll be better off switching every week. Aizawa pulled out his phone and typed what Inko said. Okay. Every week we will alternate between physical, mental, and academic training. Core training must also be included. My baby's quirk may seem weak, but if used correctly, it is unseemingly powerful. Physical, quirk, mental, academical. Academical, quirk, mental, physical. Mother, you're overwhelming the poor man. Inko sipped her tea. I'm sorry, my dear. I just have to be sure you're getting what you signed up for. You need to be absolutely prepared. I won't allow any. She glanced at Aizawa and then back at her tea. Mishaps to occur. What if you're unable to move? The only thing, then, is to rely on your quirk and mental ability. What if somebody catches you when you're training, but because you had physical and quirk training right next to each other, you might be too exhausted to defend yourself? Izuku nodded his head. You have a point, mother. They looked back to Aizawa, who was recording what they were saying, and laughed. Aizawa had to admit that it was a nice sound. Just as he ended the recording, his phone rang. Hello. Sho, where are you? It's late, even for you. Dash. Aizawa looked at Inko. She mouthed, who is it? My husband. Go ahead. I'm with the mother of my personal student. You're not cheating on me, are you? No, I would never. I'm discussing training plans, Zashi. Training plans. Show you have a personal student. Aizawa heaved a breath outward, yes. Show, can I meet them? Aizawa looked again at Inko, who said yes, yeah, tomorrow night. Yaoya. All right, Zashi. I'm on my way home now. See you. Aizawa stuffed the phone back in his pocket and started to walk to the door. He turned around and bowed on last time. Thank you for your hospitality. Inko closed the door behind him. He seems nice, Izuku, but I hope you know that I will not hesitate to ban you from seeing him should you get wounded. Izuku smiled and turned on the oven. Of course I know. Good, a teriyaki dish tonight. You know it. President Mike adored Midoriya the moment he heard about the teen. Aizawa was always seemed to grow more excited at the end of the day. President Mike had first thought it was about a coffee shop, but Aizawa let it slip that he always felt calm when he was with his friend. Since then, President Mike had pestered Aizawa nonstop with questions. He learned in all that Aizawa's friend was a teen. He was only seen at night. He was still in school, junior high. He knew a lot about his quirk, but didn't know it had a calming effect or second eyelids. Animals loved the child, and that he was quiet. Now, most people would think President Mike would be a little discouraged about this, but it was the opposite. President Mike was fond of quiet people. He loved that he could simply sit. He didn't have to talk or sing or use his quirk to be heard. He could relax. It was one of the reasons why he liked Aizawa so much. President Mike decided he wanted to meet the mystery teen, which was why he was overly happy when Aizawa told him that the mystery teen had become his personal student. Hisashi could barely sleep that night. He was too excited to meet this new person. The next day, Hisashi tailed directly behind Aizawa the entire day, from the second his precious show left the house to when he stopped for coffee. Hisashi was beginning to think that he would never get to meet the little listener until Aizawa changed his course and walked the opposite direction. Hisashi has his head over Aizawa's shoulder when they reached a small park. "Be quiet," Aizawa firmly told him. Hisashi nodded his head sharply. A rustling sounded from the bushes, and Hisashi was prepared to be loud. He was about to shout his famous catchphrase when a calm sensation overtook him. He visibly relaxed and melted onto Aizawa's shoulder. He could feel the tension ease its way out of his lover's body. A tall, glowing-faced teen sat in the bushes, just in their line of sight. "You must be present, Mike. It's nice to meet you." His voice was quiet and smooth. Hisashi found himself smiling. "It's nice to meet you too, little listener." "Little listener?" The boy giggled out the name. "What's so funny about it? What else am I supposed to call you?" The boy looked at Aizawa. "You haven't told him my name. That seems rather illogical." Hisashi was thrown off when Aizawa smiled. "It is my apologies." Aizawa looked at Hisashi. "This is Midoriya Izuku." Hisashi was still somewhat in limbo. Aizawa wasn't one to smile so openly, and what's more, he wasn't one to smile at jokes in particular. Hisashi went to shake Midoriya's hand. "Hello, Midoriya. I'm Hisashi Yamada." "Hisashi? What a coincidence. I knew somebody by the name of Hisashi." That sentence bothered Present Mike. He doesn't doubt that Midoriya has a good vocabulary. He seems like the type to speak straight to the point, so the use of the word new didn't seem right. He elected to stash that feeling for later. "So Midoriya, you're going to be my show's new student." Midoriya nodded and picked up to put a baby animal on his lap. "Yep." Aizawa seemed to be determined, so it was best to say yes the first time. "It is also a good learning experience." He stroked the animal's ear, "and I enjoy these quiet nights he spends with me. It wasn't lonely before, but it's nice to have someone to share this wonderful time with." He raised the baby animal and motioned for Hisashi to take hold of it. "For example, this is a sorrow. It usually stays deep in the forest behind the apartments, but at night a couple of families will come to graze the fresh greens over here. It's a rare sight, but you see it every night." "Yes, but it doesn't get any less wonderful." Hisashi looked at Aizawa, who was lying flat on his back with cats covering his stomach. He let out a light laugh. Aizawa smoothly glanced over to Hisashi. "What?" "It's a perk that comes with hanging around Midoriya, animals like him, and therefore the people he likes." The three of them sat and talked idly as animals kept joining them. Hisashi noticed the plants seemed to be moving just a bit towards Midoriya, and that the boy was actually quite hard to see. "Is that why you sit in the bushes?" Midoriya looked up from the badger. He was playing tug-of-war with him. Hisashi motioned toward the bushes. "It's hard to see you when you sit in the bushes. Is that why you sit in them?" "Hard to see? I don't know what you're talking about." Midoriya's tone somehow convinced Hisashi he was telling the truth. "Show, back me up here. Isn't it hard to see him when he sits in the bushes?" Aizawa moved the cat tail off of his eyes and looked at Midoriya before setting the tail back on his face. "I think it's a side effect of his quirk. He simply belongs in the bushes." "Good point," Hisashi murmured before petting the deer that had come to sniff his hair. Midoriya quirked his head and shuffled out of the bushes. In the moonlight, his leaf-like hair shimmered. "Show, look." Aizawa, again, lifted the cat's tail off of his face and glanced at Midoriya. He had seen the boy before, but never so clearly at night. Aizawa let his head fall back to the ground with a harsh thump. "If he gets into you, a curfew will be administered." Hisashi nodded his head wisely. Yes, there's no telling what kind of devilish teenagers would chase Midoriya at night. Midoriya laughed, a soft, simple laugh. "That was funny, Mike. That was really funny," Midoriya said, batting an acorn to a squirrel. Present Mike smiled. Things would certainly be a lot cooler from now on. Midoriya had adapted well to the training schedule. Aizawa had to admit that this was due to his mother's altering of the original schedule. In all honesty, Midoriya Inko scared Aizawa. Not in a fond sense either. Aizawa got the feeling that if he should put her child's life in crucial danger, then she would not hesitate to make him pay for her wrath. Midoriya seemed to sense it too and always leaned away from danger zones. He could tell when a fight was going to take place that he couldn't handle faster than Aizawa could and fled in the opposite direction, or, if there wasn't enough time, ran into the bushes. Aizawa was shocked the first time it happened. They were just strolling, rooftop hopping, around during Aizawa's patrol to exercise Midoriya's leg muscles. A large bang sounded from the nearby alley, and Aizawa, being a pro hero, went in to investigate. Midoriya traveled with him for a few minutes before turning and fleeing in the opposite direction as fast as he could. Aizawa turned to watch him go in confusion before continuing to the alley and taking a few steps back himself. The alleyway was filled with gas. Aizawa quickly called some water heroes and 13 before staring at the Quirk user. After the villain was caught, Aizawa found Midoriya curled up in a tree 2 blocks over. Thinking back on it, it's pretty fun to see the usually stoic boy turn and flee. It usually means that big trouble is nearby, but a funny moment is a funny moment. Other than the new telltale trick, Midoriya has been advancing his quirk. If he gets up in characteristics before Aizawa uses his quirk, they remain, but any time after is time-consuming. It still works, there's no changing that, it's a mutation. Just slower. And Midoriya has been, with his mother's urging, experimenting with poisonous plants. Not many, and most certainly not on people. He refuses to tell Aizawa what he's found. Mike has been deemed a few moments away from stealing Midoriya. Aizawa has warned him not to. Midoriya Izuku truly loved her child and would protect him with the strength of a mother who had nothing to lose. And based on Aizawa's few observations, that statement may be more true than he thought. There are no pictures of any man or woman other than Midoriya Izuku and Midoriya Izuku. Not even a pet picture. While we're on the subject, there's a thing Izuku was very sensitive about: quirklessness. Whenever Aizawa says the word out of the blue, he can see Midoriya Izuku lose her composure for a moment. Is someone she knows quirkless? Was someone she knew quirkless? Was she just sensitive? The closer he got to the family, the more confused he got. He should keep his nose out of it, but as an underground hero, that's very hard to do. It's just the way they are. Aizawa. Aizawa looked up from the cat he was petting. Midoriya was looking at him from around the bushes. Like an owl, Aizawa remarks. Nothing, it's just that you got really quiet. Aizawa looked at Hisashi, who shrugged his shoulders. What do you mean, kid? Midoriya stared at him for a moment before his eyes widened. Maybe it's a new quirk feature that activates at night. After all, before you guys, I never spent time with anyone at night. What activated at night? Hisashi asked, though his voice was muffled due to the bird that decided it wanted kisses. Hold on. Let me test it once more before I'm absolutely sure. Midoriya turned to look at Hisashi. Think of something really sad, one that might dampen your mood. Hisashi thought for a moment before showing a face that Aizawa only ever saw after battles where a civilian that could have survived died. In an instant after Hisashi's face changed, Midoriya's arms turned into the purple of lavender, effectively calming Hisashi back down. I was right, Midoriya said gently, like a mother explaining basic science to a child. Body heat. I guess I can pick that up too. I would bet that it was the quirk training you put me through, Aizawa-sensei. Don't ever call me that again. It unnerved Aizawa to have someone so close to him call him sensei. He reserved that title for actual students or younger people. Midoriya was one of the few friends he actually considered a friend besides people like Hisashi or Namuri. Okay, Midoriya said calmly before stroking the feathers of a bird that had landed on a branch next to him. Hisashi fell to the floor with a gentle thump before jumping up in a start and turning to stare at Midoriya, who, when Aizawa turned to look, was gone. Press, Hisashi hissed before following the animals and rushing into the forest. Aizawa quickly looked down the road and saw a load of cameras coming closer and closer to him. Picking up a mote, whose hair was standing on edge, Aizawa followed his husband and student into the densely wooded area. Damn it, he thought in a hurry, just when things were getting peaceful. Show! Hisashi whisper-shouted. Aizawa looked up to see the pointy blonde hair of his husband stuck in a tree. Hurry up and climb. Aizawa looked back to make sure nobody was following them before scurrying up the tree, where he, yet again, chased after his husband and student. Aizawa could understand how Midoriya was so good at tree climbing, but not his husband. Perhaps the cockatoo simply liked to be in trees. Midoriya led them around his apartment building, where they climbed up the ladder and along the edge. Midoriya formed a branch-like key on his pinky and unlocked the window. Once they were inside, Midoriya gently shut the window by covering the bottom of the window with lichen that he scraped off of his arm. The three of them turned around and came to face Midoriya Izuku, who had multiple knives levitating in the air. "Mother," Midoriya said calmly, "please lower the knives." Izuku looked at him with a smile before glaring at Hisashi. "Who is he?" "He is Shota's husband." "Oh." Izuku waved with her hand, and the knives flew in the opposite direction. "If I had known we were having guests, I would have prepared some tea. Please sit down." Midoriya escorted them into the living room as his mother set a pot onto the stove. "What type of tea do you like?" Midoriya's mother directed her voice towards Hisashi without looking at him. "Green is fine," Yamada politely said. Midoriya sat in front of the two husbands. "I must say, I did not expect my mother to meet you like this." Speaking of which, Ms. Midoriya's voice rang from the kitchen. "What brought you to our home?" "The press, mother," Midoriya said before Shota or Hisashi could answer. Aizawa and Hisashi are both pro-heroes, albeit Hisashi is a bit more known. The press would have the time of their lives if they caught two pro-heroes sitting by the bushes at night. Ms. Midoriya entered the living room with 4 cups of tea and a teapot balanced perfectly on one tray. That is true. She placed a saucer directly in front of Aizawa and Hisashi. "Did they catch sight of you?" Midoriya took the tray and set a saucer in front of himself and his mother. "No, mother. I sensed them coming and fled before they rounded the corner." "Good," Izuku said after sipping her tea. Midoriya placed the tray gently under the table. "We are truly sorry for barging in on you like this," Aizawa said before grabbing his cup. "We did not know where else to go." Izuku smiled at them. "It is forgiven. You are free to stay here for the night." "Thank you, ma'am," Yamada said, bowing his head. It was so formal in the Midoriya household, a gracious break from the usual rowdy parents. "Oh, please, call me Izuku. I'm sure my son has given you permission to use his first name." Shota raised a brow. "Excuse me for asking, but how are you so calm giving us permission to do so? Call you by given names, I mean." Ms. Midoriya cast a wary gaze to them. "Our family has never gotten along well with others. They scorn us for upholding tradition. In addition," she waved a hand towards her son, "Izuku has never had friends to such an extent. Only shallow acquaintances. It truly is a blessing from the gods that he came across you too. If not, I don't believe he would have had any real friends." "Is that true, Midoriya?" Midoriya looked at Hisashi. "It is. Most children don't appreciate books or nature. They disliked how I wouldn't break branches with them. To be honest, I never really liked any of them, and they never really liked me. Most teens shouldn't be so opening to talking about how lonely they are," Aizawa told himself. But Midoriya isn't exactly a regular teen, was he? Ms. Midoriya finished her tea and set the cup on a coaster. "Well, you're in time for dinner. We are having nabe. Hisashi, you take over on the cutting. Shota, you can prepare the meat. Izuku, darling, you know what to do." Midoriya nodded and moved to the kitchen. The husbands followed in pursuit. They began doing their assigned tasks. Hisashi cut and Aizawa prepared. Izuku moved to the stove and grew vines from his elbow to man the knobs. He began to get the pots down from the high shelves. Ms. Midoriya was throwing the cut food items into their appropriate dishes without much thought. "Izuku, I got your test results back. You got a 99%. Be sure to watch for negatives." "It was a clumsy mistake. I apologize." "How was the English exam?" "As easy as it was last year. We simply learned the same things over again." "That is no good. They really should advance the curriculum as the grades raise higher." "How many new terms did you learn?" "I agree. But we must remember that most kids are only prepared for the level they offered. And you know what I've learned? You coach me in English yourself. Just a bit of humor, my dear. Hizashi, be sure to cut off the ends. Aizawa, a bit more tenderness, if you will. Izuku, they should at least offer advanced classes. That is true. Aizawa, be sure to make sure every part of the meat is ready. Forgive him, Midoriya. He is not a very good house husband. Oh, I remember some Fujoshi students talking about some manga. Way of the house husband, was it? Maybe that could help him. Aizawa refused to comment on the conversation. His focus was on the meat that he was criticized on. Was it his fault that he was the more active person in their marriage? Hizashi could learn to do all this stuff. His shift was in the day, and so was his radio show. Aizawa had to work at a school during the day and patrol at night. It wasn't his fault he didn't have the time to pick up a cookbook. Izuku, if you will please. Midoriya retracted his vines from the knobs and grabbed the knives from Shota and Hizashi with the vines that grew out of his fingers. Shota and Hizashi looked over to see what had taken their knives and felt their spines tingle. Midoriya and his mother. For what feels like the first true time, they realized just how dangerous the two could be. Midoriya was twisting and controlling almost everything in the kitchen with practiced ease. His eyes calculated everything moved and took in every detail. He didn't seem to be able to blink. His mother was lifting boiling hot water around the air and spinning it as if it were a ball. She made the flames jump and licked the right parts of the pot to ensure everything was cooked. The only sign that gave away she was using her quirk was a small in the center of her eye that glowed gold. Hizashi and Shota were lucky that they were with Midoriya when they entered the apartment. Ms. Midoriya turned over to them and smiled. Dinner's ready. The epiphany Yamada and Shota had at the Midoriyas did go untold. Mostly, what do you mean it was surprising? She's a single mother. Do you not know how dangerous they are? Namiri laughed as she scolded them. A mother once dove into a bear's cage to rescue her child. The bear was sent into the emergency room. Yamada shifted in his seat and took another drink out of his can. You're right about that, but this was different, Kiyama. You tell her, Sho, you've been talking to them longer. Aizawa looked up at Namiri from his resting spot on Hizashi's lap. He's right. She was ready to flatten the apartment complex. He lazily rolled over so Hizashi would rub his back. I could sense traces of her quirk all throughout the building. If she wanted to, she could force the entire thing in a lockdown. Kiyama sighed and laid her legs on the couch. That's a little overkill. A little. Aizawa huffed. Kiyama waved her hand. Enough about her, for now. Tell me more about the boy. That part is easy. Hizashi smiled and raised his glass. The weirdest child I've ever met in my life. Little Izuku seems to be a calm, simple soul, but his mind is really complex. He sits in the bushes, so it's harder to see him and knows instantly how to calm people down. Aizawa stretched his legs by flexing them and let them fall. He knows when to flee or fight before even seeing the villain. Scared me the first time he ran. Aizawa closed his eyes, and he's not afraid to use dirty tactics. Hizashi hiccuped. What? I only saw for a moment. I was too busy dealing with another villain, but from what I saw, he picked up a brick and threw it at his opponent's hand with massive force. That was probably the crushing sound I heard. He also, this one I know for sure, uses trash can lids to stun the villains. Namiri cocked her brow. Why not just use his quirk? Aizawa got quiet for a moment before letting out the OSHD groan. He probably doesn't want anyone to know his quirk. He prefers to use a cloth to make them pass out. You let him do what? He uses it effectively. Why should I stop him? Shota. Aizawa brushed Namiri's angry hisses away. When I asked him about plants like the stinking corpse lily, he evades the subject. It took me a while to realize he was doing it. Hizashi gave Kiyama an empathetic look. He's a smart kid, and a kind one too. Animals love him, plants are drawn to him, and people feel naturally at ease around him. Namiri let out a snort and fully threw herself onto the couch, making it clear she was going to stay the night. I'll have to meet him. If he's anything like you say he is, then he could be a real gem. Aizawa felt shivers crawl through his shoulders. Namiri relax. Just a modeling gig. I'm telling you, Without Inko's permission, it'll be fine, she'll understand. Hizashi stopped rubbing Aizawa's back to pat him on the head. Just give it up. She'll learn eventually. Aizawa grumbled into a pillow, but stopped arguing. In the far distance, Ms. Midoriya felt something quiver in the air. Izuku? Yamada shouted, running up to the boy as he walked down the streets. Kiyama and Aizawa jogged to catch up with him. The boy turned and caught Yamada's hug before he was able to be knocked over. Hizashi, Aizawa-sensei. Aizawa smirked. You brat. You know not to call me that. Midoriya smiled. I know, Shota. He peeked over and above Aizawa's head. Who are you, ma'am? Kiyama waved off his hello, focusing more on his choice of words. Don't call me ma'am. I'm not that old. Midoriya looked at her for a second before blinking. Forgive me. I thought only a person with your looks earned them, and taking into consideration the makeup clowns at my school, I thought it had taken you a while to perfect such a technique. Kiyama immediately lost her hiss and smiled at the boy. You're too kind. I perfect my makeup skills in junior high. Midoriya raised his hand to shake hers. Incredible. Call me Izuku. Kiyama looked at him in shock. First name. Midoriya looked both ways before crossing the street. You are a friend of Shota's, correct? Kiyama threw her arms around the husband's. Yup. Help them get together. We've been friends since middle school. Then you're a friend of mine. Kiyama ruffled his hair. Do you let all of your friends call you by your first name? I don't have any other friends. Midoriya barely noticed as Kiyama stopped walking. What do you mean? Midoriya casually looked back at her. People just don't like me enough to be friends with me. Kiyama nearly fell to the floor. She could not understand this child. Who wouldn't like you? You seem like such a sweet boy. Midoriya turned his head and kept walking in the direction of the school. People are people. They do not care for the individual and prefer to care for the crowd. He waved goodbye to them as he entered the gates. I do not care for the crowd. Kiyama watched as Midoriya walked into the school, ignored by everyone he passed. Hey, Sho, Namiri whispered to him as they began to walk back. Do you get the feeling that that kid will never need help unless he's next to death's bed? A lot. In the quiet, Hizashi let out a stout laugh. What is it? Kiyama asked, the sudden noise relighting her fiery attitude. You didn't make one comment about how he looks. He had you figured out in an instant. Kiyama, again, nearly fell to the floor. The brat made me focus on his lack of friends. The lack of shame. Aizawa snorted. The brilliance. I did the same thing. Namiri felt betrayed. That was exactly what Aizawa had done. You just wait. I'll get you to trip over something. Aizawa raised his brow. Like what? Kiyama jumped up and smirked confidently. I bet that if you ever have an invisible student, you'll notice them more than Midoriya. Aizawa let out a small laugh. As if. Kiyama felt her BLD begin to boil. Just you wait. It'll happen eventually. And you'll trip up. Hizashi looked between the two as they argued before looking back to the school. Aizawa turned at the sound of dropping glasses. Guys, Hizashi said slowly, pointing toward the school. Is it just me? Or should we be going? Kiyama turned and let out a huge gasp. The school Midoriya had just entered was surrounded by villains. Aizawa hiccuped at a familiar cold feeling. We better hurry, he said, running towards the school. I don't know which one, but one of the Midoriyas is up to something. Well, it can't be Inko, said Hizashi, adjusting his speakers. She's all the way across the station. Does Inko also have green hair? Aizawa felt his soul leave his body. Yes. Namiri pointed towards the slender woman that was walking calmly towards the school. Is that her? Hizashi and Aizawa began to double-time it. SHD, Ms. Midoriya knew something wouldn't go right. She knew it. Years of being alone have taught her how to prepare for big hits by being able to predict them. She knew Izuku would be involved. Hence why when she saw the news of villains raiding Aldera Junior High, she was already halfway there. Inko would not lose her son again. Izuku, she shouted, standing firmly in front of the gate. She'd sked in dissatisfaction as a villain came rushing at her with a knife. With a simple push of her hand, she waved him away into a nearby trash can. Izuku, ma'am, all children would be evacuated to the center of the school. You should be safe. There is no need to enter the school. Inko turned to the officer that had spoken and patted him on the shoulder. "A good young man. Thank you." She turned and began to walk into the school. Inko, Aizawa, Yamada, and Kiyama ran to the green-haired woman before she could enter the building. Aizawa huffed and wiped the sweat off his brow. "We can handle this. We'll get him out safely. But you need to stand back, Inko." Ms. Midoriya let out a polite laugh. "Thanks for your concern, but I'll handle this." She levitated them and lined them up behind her. "But I can't let you stand here. You'll get hurt. That will make Izuku feel guilty." Hisashi struggled to put his feet on the ground. But the villains dash. Inko waved her hand and sent them flying towards the police station. There, without any further distractions, Inko marched into the building. "There are more villains inside the school," Inko noted. She turned to look at the different hallways before going down the left one. "The gym is this way. What exactly do you plan to do?" Kayam asked nervously. She had never met Inko before, but judging Aizawa and Yamada's reactions, it was bad. Clear the way for Izuku. Kiyama was done with his family. She regrets ever wanting to meet Midoriya. This was way too calm of a reaction. "We're here." Inko and Midoriya spotted each other immediately. Ms. Midoriya clapped her hands to gather everyone's attention. "Hello. I'm here to escort you all out of the building." She pointed towards the villains and gave them her famous closed-eye smile. "You'll be dealt with in a moment. The police won't enter the building. They're too afraid." She pulled the bleacher chairs off of the side of the wall and created a blocked pathway for the students. "Please exit as fast as you can." The children wasted no time sitting around and ran out of the building. A few of them gave her curious glances, but they only lasted for a second. Once the last child was out, she pushed the broken bleachers over the doors to block each exit. "Izuku," she said calmly, "what happened to your arm?" Midoriya casually stood up and stretched his wrist. "They broke it, Mother. I secured it in place and began healing shortly after they broke it. It's fixed now." "Who broke it, dear?" "Muscular. A blonde villain with black dots for pupils and a red tank top. Around 200 centimeters, Inko nodded. "All right. Dinner tonight will be takeout. You can bring your friends." She ticked her head toward the floating heroes. You know what to do with them. She didn't need any indications to know she was talking about the villains that were currently hanging from the roof. "Yes, Mother." "What's he going to do?" Namiri shrieked. The suspense was killing her. Inko turned and walked back out of the room, dropping the villains. He's going to deal with the villains. Kiyama was 100% done with the one-liners. She just wanted an explanation. "Can you put us down now?" Ms. Midoriya shook her head. "The villains are back outside. I will set you down after dealing with them." "Seriously? What is with this family?" Namiri decided that she would take a 4-hour trip to the spa. Inko stepped out of the school and instantly threw a pipe towards every villain. She picked them up and ruthlessly slammed them into the ground until they passed out before turning to face the only blonde villain still standing. "I heard you broke my son's arm," she said in a tone similar to a gossiping mother. If her hands were free, Kiyama would have started praying for Muscular. Muscular clicked his tongue and laughed. "I sure did. You his mom. You look pretty strong for someone with such a short body." Aizawa was inclined to raise an eyebrow. Inko was almost as tall as him, though that probably didn't seem very tall to a villain like Muscular, a hero like Hisashi, or any high school student over 5 feet 4 inches. "Dear, what am I to do?" Inko said, looking toward the school. "He broke your arm. If not for your quirk, that could have done a lot of permanent damage." "Oh, I know." She looked at Muscular and creaked open her left eye. "I'll just make him bet on the fact that his quirk will help him too." Muscular blinked before realizing he was embedded into the road. Inko tied the heroes up with rope and sat next to them on the roof before pointing her glare toward Muscular. Goddess's Sphere. The press recorded as Muscular was lifted into the air and compacted tightly into a ball. The blonde villain screamed as his muscles tore repeatedly. Into the rabbit hole. Muscular's round form was smashed into the ground and kept grinding against it until the ground underneath him caved in. Inko raised her ring finger to call forth the street lamps and pulled Muscular out of the ground. She effortlessly formed a wheel out of the pipes and tied Muscular to the wheel. Middle-aged technique, breaking wheel. At the end of the L, the remaining poles began to bash away at Muscular's frame. Hit after hit, jab after jab, stab after stab, bone after bone. This is the punishment you have earned, Ms. Midoriya told Muscular. And so it is the punishment you shall have. Muscular's BLD pooled in the hole below him as he created muscle wall after muscle wall to try and protect his inner frame. Mother, Ms. Midoriya turned to see her son walking out from the group of students. Are you finished? The restrained pro-heroes craned their heads to try and see Midoriya. He had been left alone in the gym, with all of the doors blocked, to deal with the remaining villains himself. Other than his right arm sleeve, he didn't have a speck of BLD on him. Yes, I am. Inko let Muscular fall into his pool of BLD. Let's go eat, yes. Inko picked up the pro-heroes and undid the ropes before setting them down. How does Anegi sound? Yamada looked between Midoriya and Aizawa before loudly clapping his hands. All right, how about we talk about the elephant in the room? Kiyama scrunched her eyebrows. What? In English saying, anyway, he pointed his chopsticks back and forth between Aizawa and Midoriya. You two have words to say to each other. Let's start with you. Yamada grabbed a pepper shaker and set it in front of Midoriya. What happened in the gym? I defeated the villains, Midoriya said, curiously trying to grab something out of his bowl. Yes, but how? Midoriya looked Yamada in the eye. I've told you all you need to know. You both keep secrets from me. I keep secrets from you. He bit into his food. That's how it goes. Aizawa rubbed his eye with his palm. What secrets could we have possibly kept from you? Midoriya looked at him and raised an eyebrow. Is that truly a question you wish to ask? It wasn't a question. Aizawa moved to tell him there was nothing, but Yamada tapped his hand lightly. Eraser, Kiyama said softly. She understood what Midoriya was talking about. They withheld information about their daily and hero lives. It was only right for Midoriya to do the same. Aizawa backed down and bit into his food. All right, he said after a few minutes. You keep your secrets, then. You have every right to. But we still have training to do, and I'm not going to let a little squabble stop that. Midoriya smiled and passed the pepper back to Yamada. I wouldn't expect any less from you, Shota. Good. Yamada slurped his noodles in satisfaction. Hey, wait a minute, Dash, no. Yamada looked at Aizawa with hurt on his face. I didn't even get to finish. No. Yamada gave a pleading look to Midoriya. Please. Midoriya looked at Aizawa. He's your husband. He wants to be your father. That would make you his father too, and parents have to resolve things themselves. Yamada swirled around at a neck-breaking speed to see Ms. Midoriya, who had just returned from the bathroom. He felt the sweat on his back weigh him down like a backpack filled with bricks. Inko sat next to Midoriya and began to separate her food. I don't mind if you call yourselves as father figures. But she snapped her chopsticks open. Keep in mind my judgment is absolute. Yamada saluted her. Yes, ma'am. He leaned in towards Aizawa. Well, Aizawa sighed and picked up his drink. Fine. Yes. Aizawa flicked his chopsticks toward his husband. You're not interfering. Yamada bit the food off of the end of Aizawa's chopsticks. I'll take it. Aizawa hummed and put an arm around his food, internally knowing very well that Mike will interfere. Can Dash, yes, Kiyama. Why does she get an automatic yes? It seems like you guys patched things up, Inko said politely before eating her food. We did, Mother, Midoriya answered. He closed his eyes and returned to the basic Midoriya look. Inko, would you and your son like to come to a pro-hero convention with us? Yamada nearly spat out his soup. Why the hell does Kiyama always barge into things? Take your time, idiot. No. Yamada, again, nearly spit out his soup. That was unexpectedly expected. May I ask why? No. Aizawa bit into his chicken and poked Kiyama's side. Okay. But Dash. Yamada could see Aizawa's ears grow by 3 as he looked up at Inko. You may take Izuku. Yamada was certain that if Namiri had a tail, it would be wagging. But he has to wear a disguise. Aizawa sipped his drink. I could take him to Best Jeanist and have a custom outfit made, if you'll allow me. Ms. Midoriya wiped her mouth. You may. Yamada bit his food. The story of how the floral hero got his hero costume. How exciting. Midoriya smiled. Floral hero. Yamada slurped his noodles. Of course. You have a plant quirk. After all, you'd be a floral hero. He stopped smiling and gave Midoriya a serious look. Did you not think a hero name? Midoriya shrugged. I didn't know I'd be a hero until now. What? Namiri hissed. What do you mean? Didn't you plan on becoming a hero? No, Midoriya answered honestly. I was going to become a business leader. Yamada was speechless. Sure, he's seen kids that don't want to be heroes, but he's also seen kids who were forced not to be heroes. He wasn't so sure if Midoriya was really telling the truth. Come up with a hero name now, then. Aizawa suggested carefully. He bit a piece of food off of Hizashi's chopsticks while the cockatoo was distracted. He regretted it and stole Namiri's drink after remembering Hizashi loved spicy foods. Midoriya hummed and tilted his head. He opened his eyes just a bit and looked at his bowl. The floral hero, two-way. Appealing. Hizashi clapped. But why two-way? Depending on how you use a flower, it can have one of two results. A good one. He revealed hemlock. Like medicine, or a bad one. The flower wilted to the floor. Like poison. It really is a simple name. It may be simple, Namiri said, but it ain't useless. Think of how many catchphrases you could have. She schooled her face into a stoic expression and partially closed her eyes. Chose a path, villain. One or two. She giggled. Imagine it. Namiri's right, Aizawa added. Not on the catchphrase part, but every hero needs a signature something. Even if it's just a hairstyle or glasses. It catches the attention of your fans and keeps your identity hidden. I'll think about it, Midoriya said. It's getting late, Ms. Midoriya said slowly. Izuku will see you all tomorrow. She raised her hand for a check. I'll pay, Hizashi said, grabbing his wallet. No, I will. Girls gotta stick together, Kiyama argued, grabbing her purse. Too late, Hizashi said, already handing his credit card to the waiter. Ms. Midoriya, and Aizawa stood up to leave while the two fought. Good night, Midoriya's, Aizawa bowed. See you tomorrow night. Goodbye, Shota. Best Jeanist squinted as he looked at the boy Aizawa and Yamada had brought. He sure did look strange. What did you say your name was? Best Jeanist asked, his eyes fixated on the boy. Midoriya. The boy answered, matching Best Jeanist's gaze. My name is Midoriya Izuku. Best Jeanist sent a look to Aizawa. He's not your kid. Aizawa shrugged his shoulders. He's more of mixed kid. Ah, Best Jeanist gave Aizawa an unbelieving look and turned to Midoriya. Arms out and hold still, please. Midoriya obeyed and, strangely enough, didn't flinch when Best Jeanist activated his quirk. Got yourself a sturdy kid, Jeanist joked quietly. His concern soon focused on how similar the boy's body was to Yamada and Aizawa's. If not for the green hair, it would have been hard to convince Best Jeanist that this boy wasn't a love child. Best Jeanist shifted to put his weight on the other side of his hips. What style are you going for? Midoriya seemed to have a look of hesitation on his face before snapping back into his calm look. Something smooth and flowy, like a white egret orchid, zinnia, or a lisianthus. Best Jeanist quirked a brow and wrote the flowers down. Give me one more. A ranunculus. Right. Best Jeanist noticed Midoriya smiling and turned to see what he was smiling at. The sight made him smile too. Over in the corner, Aizawa was slowly mouthing the words and typing them into his phone. Best Jeanist brought out his phone and filmed Aizawa painfully whispering Lisianthus under his breath. Yamada will pay big bucks for this later, Jeanist snickered, reaching for his drawing pad. Midoriya turned to Best Jeanist and cocked his head. You're going to sell the video to Hizashi. Yup, Best Jeanist answered, not looking up from his current craft. Why? To make Hizashi lose some of the money he got out of last week's gambling party. That's stupid. Midoriya stretched out a vine and took away Best Jeanist's pencil. If you really want to get back at him, ask Namiri for help too. Sell them to her for a high price and have her make Hizashi pay almost double. Then you split the profit. While he was talking, he sketched the plan on a small corner of a new page. Best Jeanist stared at the plan. That's incredible, but how does a junior high student know about such tactics? Midoriya shrugged his shoulders, and gave the pencil back to Best Jeanist. Mother likes for me to be prepared. Your mother is very cautious, Midoriya. Please, Midoriya said, smiling the Midoriya smile. Call me Izuku. Best Jeanist reached out to shake Midoriya's hand. Tsunagu. Damn it, Izuku, Aizawa sighed from the back. This was a sight he's seen for the third time. Is one personality not enough? Never mind. What do you have in mind for the costume? Best Jeanist took the notebook back from Midoriya and sketched out the plan. This is what I'm thinking. He showed the sketch to Aizawa. His hero name will be two-way, right? I was thinking about creating a half-half pattern, the front being smooth with drift-like pattern and cool colors while the back is blossoming with bright and toxic colors. The entire design relies on the flowing pattern to look smooth, refined, and tight, while also being cool and loose. The pants flare out a bit toward the bottom to give off a dress-like finish. The sleeves reach halfway down his hand. That's where a pair of brown gloves will be. The front is going to be layered over very, very lightly. In the back, he switched pages and began to sketch the design over again. It will be like flower petals. Sprouts of fabric will poke out, overlap, and fray out everywhere while being tightly kept. Aizawa hummed, and his face cover. A veil, Best Jeanist said after a moment of thought. He could have something like a bridal veil. His veil will be black. He'll be able to see past it while keeping it so that no one will be able to see his face, even if they're practically touching noses. This was your mother's bridal veil, Izuku. It's pretty. I know it is. I'd love to see you have one hung up in your room one day, too. That's a good idea, Midoriya said. If you say so, Aizawa said, handing the sketch pad back to Best Jeanist. How soon can you have it ready? Best Jeanist tapped his foot. If I make it in between hero work and my actual job, about a week or two. That's pretty early, Midoriya remarked. Thank you very much. You're welcome. Best Jeanist patted the sketch pad. It'll be done in no time. And as for my payment dash, last summer. Deadline. It's free. Aizawa got up from his spot on the wall and patted Best Jeanist's shoulder. Thanks. Now, let's go, Izuku. Kiyama is waiting at the gym for you. Of course, Midoriya said, moving away from the stool he was standing on to take his place beside Aizawa. It was a pleasure to meet you, Tsunagu. Please, the pleasure was all mine. So. Kiyama shouted. Look who finally showed up. Forgive our tardiness. Midoriya apologized. Best Jeanist instructed me to show this to you. He walked away from Aizawa and faced him before showing Kiyama the video. Aizawa bit his tongue in shock as Kiyama fell off of the bar she had been hanging on. Wahaha. He actually. Ahahahaha. She looked at Aizawa and broke into a giggle fit. Aizawa felt his ears grow warm. If you don't stop laughing, my foot will be in your mouth, he said through clenched teeth. Sorry, Kiyama apologized, her face losing its smile immediately. She stood up, dusted herself off, and climbed onto the highest bar before breaking into laughter. Midoriya watched as Aizawa swung himself up the bars with expert ease and planted his shoe inside of Midnight's mouth, knocking the heroine to the floor. A good person, Aizawa said with a finger raised. Always follows through with their word. F the picture. Midoriya Izuku was not on Endeavor's #1 pro list. A young upstart that was taking care of villains left and right without wanting to reap his reward or spread. His name, a young upstart that had massive levels of power, a young upstart that looked at him as if he were a C-ranked hero, a young upstart that was young. Endeavor gritted his teeth. Shoto. The prodigy son walked out from behind the old-style door frame. Yes, father. Starting tomorrow, you'll be going on patrol with me. I want you ready before I leave. Shoto frowned. But, Father Dash, before I leave, Shoto, Endeavor repeated. He stamped a fiery slip and left for his room. Midoriya Izuku was currently holding a villain down with vines and slowly working Eraserhead out of a cage of thorns. That was close, Eraserhead muttered under his breath, knowing Midoriya would hear. I dash. He stopped and put his finger on the trash can. I was trying to guide the villain into the cage. You're the one who dropped down. Eraserhead watched Midoriya through the corner of his eyes. Midoriya tripped upon his words, which never happened. It was weird that the usually stoic and calm-headed Midoriya would forget that Aizawa was supposed to jump down, unless it was part of his plan. One that required flawless acting. Eraserhead sked and turned his head toward the villain. Too much work. I'll carry him, Eraser, Midoriya began, heading to pick up the vine-wrapped criminal. No, it's fine. Eraserhead, Midoriya smiled. I insist. Deciphering this teen was way too much work. Fine. Aizawa rewound his capture scarf and hopped onto the roof. This is the fastest way to the police office. Midoriya threw the villain over his shoulder and jumped lightly onto the rooftop behind Aizawa. Lead the way, sir. Aizawa leapt forward and felt uneasy as an unwavering stare was plastered onto his back. Sometimes being around this kid is too much, he thought painfully to himself. A vine whipped out from behind him and engaged him in a ball. Midoriya, Aizawa barked. What's going on? Release me. Forgive me, Eraserhead. Midoriya apologized from the outside. A small section in the ball opened, and the villain fell onto the bottom of the sphere. It seems we have run into a small problem. Let me out and we can work on it together, Aizawa said. If I were to let you out now, you would pass out or die. There's a type of gas floating around us, and I can't figure out which type it is. I can't let you fight out there alone. And why aren't you affected by the gas? If you wish to do something, please call 13, so they can remove all this gas. As for the second question, my quirk allows me to create poisonous substances, so my skin and lungs are resistant to any poison I've tried on myself and their components. Aizawa stood in the ball, doing nothing for what felt like forever to him. Here he was useless again, sighing and getting over himself. Aizawa phoned 13 and explained the situation. Izuku, Aizawa barked. 13 is on her way. Grand, Midoriya said calmly from outside the ball. Remind me to create you a set of gas-resistant masks when we return to our normal schedule. Please. Situations like these are unpleasant. If he hadn't been worrying before, Aizawa was worrying now. Midoriya does not describe situations as unpleasant unless they were bad. Taking a deep breath, Aizawa put his ear to the side of the all. Who do you keep talking to? Asked a high-pitched voice. A woman in her late to early 20s to early 30s, according to Aizawa's ear. I'm the one you're fighting. I don't know why you're still standing. Mustard's gas should have knocked you out ages ago. And why do you look familiar? I think I've seen you before, Meow. Sosaki, Midoriya, try to reason. You're not in your right mind. What happened to you? I've told you before. I don't have a name Sosaki. I'm Mioi. No, Midoriya insisted firmly. Your name is Sosaki Shino. You're a member of the Wild Wild Pussycats. Sosaki, Aizawa repeated. What's she doing here? Who's Mioi? Liar. You're a liar. Meow. Hiss. I was rescued from a bad man by our savior. Midoriya went quiet for a moment. Sorry, Sosaki. Aizawa pressed his ear harder against the wall of vines, but couldn't hear a thing. Not a yelp, not a hiss, not the rustle of plants. Eraserhead, came a shallow voice from the outside. How long until 13 gets here? Judging from her speed and fastest direction from her job, around 4 to 7 minutes. Midoriya was quiet for a minute before throwing a knocked-out teen in a gas mask hanging awkwardly off his face into the ball and wrapping vines along the shallow pores that were opened along his wrists. Keep an eye on them. If there's a fight, just shout my name or scratch on the vines. What was going on out there? Do I have your okay, Eraserhead? No. Midoriya had said something while Eraserhead was zoning out. He can't give Midoriya the okay. I respect your wishes. Hey, you mustn't be here right now. A civilian like you could get hurt. A light shout of incoherent words was all Aizawa could hear before the telltale sound of Midoriya's heels began to walk away. Do you have a yearning for death? This is not the place for a civilian. Another incoherent mumble. Next to Aizawa, a small bouquet of flowers blossomed. Hyacinths and white tulips, Aizawa noted faintly. They tend to bloom around Midoriya when he's gazing off at children. Aizawa didn't have long to attempt to decipher why the flowers were blooming here, as there were no children, when a black-haired teen was tossed into the vine cage. Aizawa moved to pick the kid up only to be restrained by the vines, keeping him and the three others locked in the cage. Before you help, Midoriya's voice whispered through a flower next to Aizawa. Observe the teen. How old does he look? Aizawa squinted at the teen, willing to play along with whatever Midoriya was playing. Around your age, I guess. Correct. And now how heavy does he look? The black-haired teen didn't look heavy. His ribs were visible from the side of his body, and his lips were cracked. Exhaustion poured from the boy, so much so that Aizawa was grateful that Midoriya had put him to sleep. He doesn't look like he weighs more than you do, Aizawa whispered, remembering to reply. And now look at his wrists. Aizawa didn't need to see where Midoriya was going with this, but nonetheless, he did. As expected, a familiar crisis cross pattern was littered up the teen's arms, a quilt that had been stitched together, again and again, to make the stains and broken parts disappear. Erase her head, Midoriya said through a holly that was near his ear. You can't leave him alone. Abuse and hunger reeked from him. There was so much that I couldn't safely get near him. He wasn't on the battle scene to fight a great evil. His costume is for show. He was hoping to die. Eraserhead's answer was delayed by his ringing phone. Yes, who is it? Eraser. It's me. 13. You're going to have to wait a while. Eraserhead frowned. What's going on? There's been a villain attack in one of the local estates. Someone with a pyro quirk, and the fire is spreading quickly. Midoriya securely bound them each to a vine before having the cage sink into the ground. He absent-mindedly pulled his sleeves down to put of nonchalance. Where are they? Stay put, Eraserhead. 13 shouted into the phone. This situation is getting beyond our control. The ING-13 stopped mid-sentence. SHD, Eraser don't. Oma will be on his way soon. Just get back to patrol. She hung up. Eraserhead looked at Midoriya. Midoriya looked at him. Where to? Eraserhead, Midoriya asked. The Ingenium household, otherwise known as the Ida family. Midoriya nodded and balanced on the side of the roof. Let's go. 13 nearly dropped her hold on the iron beam when Aizawa dropped in front of her. I told you to stay away. The space hero barked. Aizawa quickly moved behind 13 and helped lower the beam to the ground. I couldn't have done that. Sir, Midoriya said as he set down the ball. What do you wish me to do with these people? He looked at 13. Inside this ball is Sosaki, who attacked us, a teenage villain with a knockout gas quirk, and a severely damaged boy. Will you take over watching them for us? The vines shouldn't be able to let up unless Midoriya tells them to. Ira's dash, Midoriya grabbed Eraser's hand and pulled him toward the fights. Excuse me, but this conversation can be held later. Eraserhead, yes or no? Eraserhead stared at Midoriya and sighed deeply. Yes. At once Midoriya released Eraserhead's hand and was off. Vines sprouted from weeds that scattered along the sidewalk cracks to aid him along. Eraserhead. Aizawa looked to see Vlad King waving at him from behind a building. His left arm was bleeding heavily. You got to get out of here. This villain is a level S. What's his name? Overhaul. Eraserhead thought back to the meeting Mizu held at Nitai's agency. The raid wasn't to take place anytime soon, nor was there any sudden activity. What went wrong? His eyes opened wide. SHD, Midoriya was out there. He ran away from Kan and ignored his warnings. His safety would be more at risk if Inko found out he wasn't watching Midoriya. Two-way. Eraserhead shouted. Get back here. Unfortunately, Midoriya was too far away. Nor was he paying attention to Eraserhead anyway. His attention was focused on the bleeding child hidden behind an array of guards. His vines rose and covered themselves in thorns. He grit his teeth and sent them forward in a blurred charge. He could handle this much. This was nothing. Vines spiked and tore at villains in all directions in an attempt to clear the way for Midoriya. Hey, I remember you. Midoriya was flung toward the side as a muscled fist punched his side, pulling his vines away with him. Muscular, Midoriya spat. Did my mother not teach you enough? The big man smiled. Your mother was strong, but you were a toothpick. Your mother will be next after I finish you off. His quirk began to cover his arms in muscle, layer upon layer. I'll kill you both, and then I'll go after the rest of those pathetic heroes around you." Midoriya felt his facial composure drain away, and a frown formed on his face. "I assure you that I will not be as merciful as my mother." Muscular laughed. "What could you do? Come at me, punk, and if you succeed in satisfying me before you're dead, I might have your mother do a favor for me before she dash." Aizawa arrived only to see Muscular's body begin to fill with plants. There were a few he could name, but that made it all the worse. Water hemlock, deadly nightshade, white snakeroot, thorned branches surrounded Muscular's throat and began to squeeze. "Two-way," Aizawa barked. "You're killing him." Midoriya didn't stop. His eyes were covered in leaves, and his ears were covered in flowers. "Two-way," Aizawa had to think fast. At this rate, Midoriya will be charged for murder. He closed his eyes and screamed. "What would your mother say?" "My what?" Aizawa opened his eyes. Midoriya was looking at him, and Muscular was breathing. The thorns had disappeared along with the plants. What would your mother say? Would she be happy with you if you got put in prison?" "No, I don't think she would be." "Thank you." Erase her head. Midoriya turned away from Muscular and back to the girl. "I can now focus on the target at hand." Wait dash. Again, Midoriya was no longer listening to him. The teen was forcing his way through the barrage of villains with his fists and flowers. "I'm almost there," Midoriya said to the little girl. "Can you look at me? I'm trying to help you." The girl weakly opened her eyes. She was crying. "He can't help you, Eri." Midoriya and Aizawa stared at the plague-masked man. "Overhaul," Aizawa whispered to Midoriya. "He can't help you." Overhaul repeated again. "He's not helping you because he wants to. He's helping you to get your benefits. He doesn't care about you." The man held out his hand to the little girl. "Come with me, Eri, and I won't hurt them. You don't want anyone to get hurt because of you again, right? Be a good girl, Eri. You're making me angry." "Liar," Midoriya said calmly. "You're a two-faced liar." He pointed to Eri. "He's right about one thing. I'm not helping you because I care about you." Two-way dash. "I'm helping you because there are people who do care about you." Midoriya made a quick picture of Eraserhead, Vlad King, 13, Midnight, and his purple highness with his vines. "They want to see you safe. Do you want their efforts to go to waste? Do you want to keep hurting?" Eri shook her head. Midoriya nodded. "Then I need you to tell me. Say the words. Tell me you want me to save you." Eri hesitated. She began to shake. Midoriya pushed harder. Aizawa could hear the strain in his voice. "Eri, say the words. I can save you. You just need to tell me you want to be saved." "Eri," Overhaul warned. Something was off about the green hero. Something that Overhaul felt they had in common. "Let's go." "Eri," Midoriya barked. "Say the words." Overhaul stepped through a portal, dragging Eri behind them. Eri never got the chance to open her mouth. Once the portal closed, the hint of emotion that had been on Midoriya's face disappeared. Vines whipped out from the ground and restrained the remaining villains. "Two-way," Eraserhead began. "What the F was that?" Midoriya looked away. "I'll explain. Soon just don't let Mo Thurk know." He fell to the ground in a quickly growing puddle of BLD, damn it. Aizawa cursed. He picked up Midoriya and took out his phone. "Recovery girl. I need your help. ASAP." Midoriya didn't want to wake up. Aizawa paced along the bed as Recovery Girl checked Midoriya's eyes. "He seems to be all good," Recovery Girl said. She wrapped up her tools and threw the disposable pieces away. "Now you can tell me how you damaged your insides so brutally." Aizawa looked up. "What are you talking about?" I'll explain." Aizawa stood closer to the bed while Midoriya sat up. "I expected this much to happen. It seems that my quirk truly can't exist without some drastic change." He sighed. "I'll explain everything, starting off with my internal injuries. My heart is surrounded by vines, as is the rest of everything in my body. They are me. They use my BLD to grow. That is why, despite being able to preform photosynthesis, I consume foods that are rich in what my body needs to create more BLD. If I use this power, the expanding of vines and plants from my body, I begin to lose BLD, which causes the vines in my body to restrict in an attempt to make themselves smaller to use less BLD. That also means the vines restrict on the organs and veins and such thing in my body, causing me to lose more BLD. And what about what happened at the plaza? Aizawa scrunched his eyebrows and ignored the hit he earned from Recovery Girl's cane. Why didn't you go help her? Midoriya sighed again and ruffled his hair. That is simply a rule I have to follow. Nature speaks to me. I can hear it as if it were a voice in my head, and it repeats things often, but it repeats one thing the most. I cannot save a life that is capable of choosing for themselves. Have you tried before? No. Midoriya had the look on his face, the one look of many that Aizawa remembered, a look that said, "Don't ask." Recovery Girl saw the look and bashed Aizawa in the head with her cane. Stop upsetting my patient. What kind of teacher are you? How long have I been here for? Aizawa looked at the clock. About 12 hours. I told your mother that you worked a little too hard healing people and needed a nap about 4 hours ago. Midoriya frowned. She only asked 4 hours ago. Yes. Why? She is up to something. Midoriya Izuku knew this much. His mother would never wait for so long after hearing of a battle. She would have rushed to the scene at once. No reason. Just thought I heard you wrong. Aizawa nodded and picked up his scarf. If you're awake, then you can call and talk to her yourself. I'll lend you my phone since yours is dead. No, I'll go home and talk to her myself. Midoriya picked up the covers and slid one foot off the bed. Recovery Girl slammed her cane in front of Midoriya's foot. Where do you think you're going? Midoriya calmly picked up the cane with a vine and set it down on a chair. Home. You have to wait until a guardian signs you out. Midoriya titled his head toward Aizawa. You didn't sign me in, right? Aizawa flinched. No, your mother would have thrown a fit. Good, because you're right. Recovery Girl looked at Aizawa in shock. You didn't sign him in? Midoriya slid out of the bed and grabbed his change of clothes. Thankfully, this wasn't my actual costume. Best Jeanist would have been upset. Recovery Girl was about to have a heart attack. He came into the emergency ward almost dead, and he's worried about a costume. She sighed. He's the top of your worries. Midoriya didn't look at her as he put his shoes on. I never said that. But you just dash. Thank you for caring for me. Midoriya bowed before leaving the room. Aizawa put a hand to his face. The paperwork. He looked at Recovery Girl hopefully. Could you knock me out? Recovery Girl grabbed her can and hit the back of Aizawa's legs. Out. Are you forgetting about the other child you brought here? Out. Mother. Inko was sitting on the couch, sipping tea next to her lamp. Izuku, I see you have returned. Yes, I have. My power kept me asleep. Inko raised a brow. You weren't fighting with Eraserhead. Midoriya stood stone still. I had been. Your answers are getting vaguer and vaguer. She picked up her cup. We're moving. Mother, we have only been here for a year. And as our deal said, I would give this place a chance unless I have decided it as an absolute no. Midoriya frowned slightly. What is the reason for your absolute no? Inko set her cup down. I sense a presence greater than what I can deal with. Midoriya opened his eyes slightly. Here. Yes, I can't beat it, not now. We have to go home. What about my internship? Inko picked up her book. If you want to continue it, you can visit the city daily through the train system. Yes, Mother. My love. Midoriya stopped his movement. Yes. Inko was looking at him, her silver pupils focusing solely on him. That boy you picked up, will he bring trouble later on? Midoriya lowered his guard. No, Mother, he is only a boy. Inko sat back and closed her eyes again. I believe you. Thank you, Mother. Aizawa Yamada stood in front of the black-haired boy. What were you doing in the alley? Yamada asked him. He scoffed. I was going to end it all. What else would I have been doing on a rooftop? Aizawa almost flinched. Those bruises, were they caused by your family? The boy looked down. They aren't much of a family. Yamada handed a card to the boy. Do you want to go back? He started crying. And I don't want to go back. Yamada let the boy hold his hand as he cried. What's your name? Shindo. Shindo-yo. And where have you been? Aizawa asked, tapping his foot against the rooftop. Midoriya gave him a pensive smile. I was helping my mother move boxes. We recently returned to our main home now when it's getting colder. Aizawa sensed the lie, but whatever Ms. Midoriya decided wasn't his fight. Best Jeanist wants to give you your costume. Mike and Midnight are waiting there too. Then let's us go. Hold it. Aizawa pulled a mask out of his pocket. You need to hide your face before you enter the building, because you'll be exiting as a public figure. Pull your hood up too. Yes, erase her head. Midoriya smiled. Aizawa huffed in annoyance and began to run along the rooftops. Are you coming? Right behind you. Izuku, are you coming? Right behind you, Dad. Midoriya held up the fabric. This isn't the design we discussed. Well, Best Jeanist scratched his head. We ran out of black fabric halfway through, so we had your veil be black instead and made the front of the costume white. Aizawa titled his head. Looks like a bridal gown. Turn it around. Midoriya took the dress out fully and spread it open. The backside was filled with holes. Midoriya was silent. Sensing his confusion, displeasement, Best Jeanist hurriedly explained. I left the back part for an assistant of mine to do, while I figured out how to alter your pants to fit the smooth side of the shirt, and she decided on her own that if you had a flower quirk, you could just grow the flowers onto the costume yourself. Hizashi couldn't manage a snarey response without sounding rude. If it was any other designer, it'd seem like a good idea. Best Jeanist rested his hand on his head, but she has a knack for finding ways to be lazy with costume design. And that's me putting it kindly. For Gang Orca's costume, she thought that making the fabric out of a basically see-through material would be fine, because his skin would naturally color it. Midoriya set the costume back in the box. I can't wear this. Kiyama pulled the box away and threw the costume at him. Try it on. I couldn't possibly do it. Kiyama pushed Midoriya toward the bathrooms. Go on. Let's see. Midoriya sighed and walked into the bathroom. You are really pushy, Tsunagu said to Kiyama. She was born with it, Hizashi said in a sad tone. Yup. Knock knock. Aizawa rubbed his nose. I wonder who that could be. I can leave if you'd like. Hizashi pushed Aizawa to the side and swung open the doors. Shindo, the black-haired teen, waved from the doorway. Yo, come on in. Midoriya is trying on his hero costume right now. Look, here's yours. Kiyama and Hizashi swarmed around Shindo in non-stop jabber. Did someone say my name? Midoriya walked out of the bathroom calmly. What is it? Best Jeanist pushed Aizawa out of the way and inspected Midoriya's costume. The waistline fits well. The pants aren't touching the ground. The veil covers your face nicely. The fabric doesn't look too tight turnaround for me. He looks different from when I first met him, Shindo said to Aizawa. Aizawa nodded. I think was panicking when you first came around. He's normally a very stoic and kind person. But he was stoic and kind that day. Yes, but Aizawa rubbed his head. He always has words and never leaves a hair behind when he's covering his tracks. When you met him, just beforehand, he had stuttered. Shindo shrugged. Everyone messes up every now and then. I guess you're right. Aizawa leaned against the wall with his arms crossed. Something still doesn't feel right now, Bloom. A loud pop echoed the room. Kiyama swiveled around excitedly. Uvo, what was that? Midoriya's back was to them. The holes in his costume had been covered by a miscellaneous array of bright flowers. They formed in the shape of a shield on his back that lowered down to his knee. Wow, Best Jeanist gasped. That girl was right. This is much better. My original design would seem lifeless compared to this. It was lifeless, Midoriya joked. Give us a walk around the room. Best Jeanist herded all of the people toward the center of the room. Now we watch. Midoriya sighed lightly and began to walk around the room. From the side, a person could see the blurred line between the white fabric and the flowers. Petals fell as he walked around, but when they hit the ground, they curled up into a nasty black pile. The bridal veil's band was hidden in his mess of leafy hair. The veil seemed to be floating on his face. It's a very appealing design, Shindo admitted. It's very pretty, Kiyama gushed. Best Jeanist felt his hand curl up. It is not pretty, Kiyama. It is appealing. If I wanted it to be pretty, I would have done it differently. Shindo's costume is going to be handsome. Right, Kiyama apologetically waved. I forgot you were sensitive toward these things. My teacher used to call all the designs in the classroom pretty. No individuality for anything. There was a particularly handsome piece that was labeled as pretty, and it struck that student down with the force of God. Pretty is such an overused term. I do not want him to seem pretty. I want him to be appealing. Now you've done it, Hizashi whispered to Kiyama. Aizawa's costume is fine. Your costume is lavish. Hisashi's costume is liberal. Sakamata's costume is kingly. Why do people forget these terms? Midoriya patted Best Jeanist on the back. I personally think that Hawk's costume is rather charming. Best Jeanist looked up from his hands. You get it. Aizawa shooed Shindo toward the bathroom. You should probably get your costume on so we can get him complimenting you and on the road. Right, Shindo said hesitantly. Don't worry. Aizawa scratched his nose. You'll get used to it. Present Mike smiled and gestured widely to any pro heroes they walked past, screaming, not literally, that he had two small heroes with him. It made Midoriya and Shindo pretty shy. Midoriya was grateful for the veil that covered his face and knew Shindo must feel the same about his mask. Now that they had time, Midoriya took a closer look at his future friend's costume. It was quite handsome indeed, almost daring but not too regal. It consisted of a peeling, tight CRP top that cut off halfway through where his first set of abs would be. Settled above, it was a dark yet soft cape. He wore a pair of well-fitting cargo pants that looked as if they had a silky touch to them. His mask had the same fabric as his cardigan, with a dainty purple symbol of his own creation. It meant Earth God. His shoes were clean-cut flats, the exact opposite of Midoriya's leg-crawling boots. Most of his clothes were purple, green, or black. A good color combination. Midoriya was so thankful he had been there to veto Aizawa's orange suggestion. Orange just wasn't pretty. Not as a color. As a concept, or as a flower, yes. But the actual color was disgusting. Midoriya could hear Shindo's snarky remarks through his gas mask. It took a lot of concentration to not have a flower burst out. Ugh, kids, please don't touch me with those snotty fingers. Oh, they did. There's snot on my cloak. I want to die. That will never come out. You ugh. Hey kids, Present Mike shouted. Since you're my care today, while Eraserhead ice off duty, why don't we do something fun? Off duty. More like you F him to death. What was that? Shindo straightened his mask. Nothing, this mask was just itching my nose. They walked off to the bowling alley with a small patch of bluebells behind them. Midoriya Izuku was a curious being, is what Shindo would say if you asked about him. He wouldn't be mean about it either. He was being completely honest. To him, Midoriya Izuku was simple a curious person. The green-haired stranger wanted to know everything about everything. On a patrol, he had stopped for an hour to simply stare at a water tour and talk about it. When he got into a deep concentration, his face would break out in leaf petals and moss would grow along his arms. These were deep trances, and when he snapped out of it, he could barely remember what he was thinking. All he had was the answer. Shindo would also say, in complete honesty, that Midoriya Izuku was a curious person. His rescuer was evasive when asked about his past. He didn't say much about his quirk, nor did he seem to want to talk about his personal life on a personal level. Shindo knew what school he went to, and he knew what Midoriya thought about the school, but he couldn't tell if Midoriya liked it or if he was actually learning anything or if he was popular. A very curious person indeed. What's more is that, and he won't tell you this, no one except for him seems to have seen that orange mark that seemed to bleed out of Midoriya's nose. Aizawa said it might have been BLD, that Shindo was delirious at the time. There was no way Shindo would have forgotten it. How it stood out amongst the blues and purples of Midoriya's veins. How it seeped out slowly and viciously, as if it could somehow control itself. Being honest, he told himself he didn't want to see it again. Earth God, Present Mike shouted. Come on, there's a mission report a few kilometers from here. Shindo wiped his eyes, clearing away his thoughts. Midoriya stood next to Present Mike atop of a giant vine. Their ride, Shindo assumed. Casually picking away at a flower that was growing on his hand, Midoriya sent a vine down to pick Shindo up and set him on the flower next to Mike to adventure. Present Mike shouted, and beyond. She laughed and danced in a field of flowers. Hisashi, she giggled as the man tossed water at her. They were young, happy, appealing. Inside this hidden world, they didn't worry about her family or his followers. They could be them. In this hidden world of flowers and sun, it was just them. Hisashi, she sighed as she plopped next to him in the grass. Can't we stay here forever? We can, Hisashi said. We could live in this world alone until the end of time. She closed her eyes and inhaled the smell of the damp grass. Alone forever. Well, Hisashi said, twirling an acorn he found. Maybe there could be a little one crawling around here in the future. She laughed and turned toward him. We're not even married. How are you planning so far ahead? He spun his head and looked at her. Like this. With a gentle pop, he took the acorn's top off and handed it to her. Hisashi dash. He looked at her and then back at the ring before once again staring into her eyes. Will you marry me? Midoriya leaned over the toilet farther. He was glad his mother wasn't home. He lightly tapped the area just under his nose and winced. He had been reckless. He had been stupid. He knows his limits. His mother told him his limits. He knows his limits. He was sweating, hyperventilating. Why did he try to help that boy? Why? He didn't want help. He didn't ask for help. He couldn't save the kid, but save the boy. He loathes this power. He loathes it. It loathes his family as well. Why? Else would have chose him. Him out of all of his siblings. Midoriya dropped to the ground in exhaustion. A flower blossomed next to him and was kind enough to offer a water-soaked leaf. Shindo stood next to him and raised an eyebrow. All quirk and no muscle. Shut up, Midoriya heaved. Aizawa, arms crossed, looked down on both of them from his pedestal. You both need some serious training. That's what you're here for, Midoriya reminded him. You run your mouth for somebody that could barely last 7 laps. You stand pretty straight for someone who bottoms so often. You dash enough. Shindo groaned. I don't want to have to be the adult here and say it, but you're both bottoms that are but hurt because it's the end of the day. Why don't we go eat? Aizawa's treat. WH dash. That sounds good, Midoriya said as a vine lifted him off the floor. What are you thinking? How about Aunt Sam's? Good choice. Now wait, a dash. Midoriya grabbed a hold of the door handle. Are you coming, Shota? Eraserhead looked at the sweat-filled gym and to his palms before sighing and following the two. We're not eating inside. Deal, the two said in sync. Izuku. Ms. Midoriya picked at the food on her plate. How's training going? Midoriya gazed at his plate. It's going well, mother. Has anything exciting happened yet? Midoriya knew what she meant by exciting. He knew she was waiting for any sign. A sign that what Eraserhead was teaching them was dangerous. A sign that he's pushing himself too hard. A sign that his gift was acting up. No, he said, not particularly. We've been practicing some beginner fighting moves and exercising. He waited a healthy pause before continuing. I misspoke. We did encounter a minor villain. An amateur, nothing too special. Ms. Midoriya raised a brow. And you acted accordingly. Yes. The rest of their meal went on in silence. Then an unusual thing happened in the Midoriya household. Ms. Midoriya set down her chopsticks. Your aunt called. Midoriya kept eating. What did she say? She said some unsavory things were happening back home. Midoriya kept eating. Poor her. Indeed. And as of the fact that it's safer here, she and her daughter will be coming over. Midoriya paled. His vines started to branch out around his feet. The thought of any of them ever walking through his doorway had never occurred to Midoriya. He knew his mom's stances on them. She knew he knew. She was trying to tell him something. That must be it. That she knew. She knew he did something. Something Aizawa didn't know about. Something the gods didn't know about. She knew. He retracted his vines and took another steady bite. I'll clean the spare room right away. But Mom, he made eye contact with her. Both of their irises locked onto the other's. In a short amount of time, the room became thick with tension. I understand how things are back home. However, no one here is to know. Not one detail. You haven't told Aizawa yet. Never. Good. She picked up her utensils again. No one is to ever know. Do you remember why? Yes, Mother. The tension remained throughout dinner. Shindo could notice something was different about Midoriya the next day. His training was perfect. He made no mistakes and didn't overreact. Even Aizawa was suspicious of it. The two were both consciously watching Midoriya, making notes of their own. Shindo had only truly seen Midoriya act different once, and that was the day of his rescue. Midoriya had seemed like he was being pushed by something internally. He had looked not pale, but blue. Blue, as if he had been running out of air. That could not be the case, as Midoriya could not suffocate per se. Shindo spent a good amount of time pondering what he had seen and how he had never seen it again. Today reminds him of that day. The similarities are few, but they're there. And they're telling him something is wrong with Midoriya. Want to go hit up Aunt Sam's after dinner? Shindo called from the pull-up bar. Had he not been doing a pull-up, he might have noticed the clean glance Midoriya gave him at the utterance of the word aunt. I heard they got new dessert. Apple pie. I've always wanted to try apple pie. He did not notice the crease in Midoriya's mouth as it pulled back, nor the momentary halt in his push-up. I will have to decline your invitation, Shindo, Midoriya replied. His tone was monotonous, with a hint of forced joy. Whatever was going on was enough to rattle him. Oh, Shindo released the bar. Okay, guess I'll have to eat Shota's cooking tonight. Aizawa's hair raised. You're saying it's bad? Shindo immediately held his hands up. No, I'm not saying it's bad. Aizawa let his hair fall. I'm saying it's inedible. Shindo had just enough time to raise up an earthen wall before Aizawa's bandages lashed him. Midoriya didn't even chortle. The clock rung loudly, and as usual Midoriya began to pack up what he had been working on. You could go ahead and leave it out, kid, Aizawa told him. Some kids are coming in later to use it, so might as well let it air dry. A short nod was his answer. Midoriya calmly walked his way toward the door, not waiting for Shindo or Aizawa to follow him. I'm about to get home for dinner, he said to them. He turned and smiled. Mom's making something foreign. Lucky, Shindo muttered while kicking the ground. Both of them pretended to fight while Midoriya continued out of the room, unaware, seemingly, that Shindo and Aizawa were both analyzing him. Later that night, Aizawa went to his as Midoriya's usual meeting spot. Unsurprised, the boy wasn't there. He walked toward the apartment buildings on empty reflex and found himself coming to a halt before stepping foot on the sidewalk. Something was wrong. Mrs. Midoriya's usual traces of Quirk had completely vanished. In its place was a feeling so coated in danger Aizawa didn't know how he came this close in the first place. Curiously, he looked up. From the window of the Midoriya's apartment, a noxious glow illuminated it. It wasn't Aizawa's place to be meddling, he reminded himself, but still prayed Midoriya was okay. His phone buzzed. Thank you for joining us on this journey through What If Deku Had Nature Plant Quirk. We hope you found it as captivating as we did. A big thank you to MyMindsRealm for creating such an engaging story. Don't forget to visit their profile on Wattpad for more fantastic works. The link is in the description below. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe to Zenin Fanfics for more intriguing explorations into fanfiction and fantasy. Your support helps us create more content like this, and we love hearing your thoughts and suggestions in the comment section. See you soon in the next video.